The bounty was fixed at $2 million, dead or alive. They nicknamed her the Ghost, since nobody who ever saw her face lived long enough to retell it. But when three powerful adversaries put a price on Riley Cross's head, they unknowingly sealed their own destinies. They had exposed their exact positions. This was Riley Cross, 28 years old, black hair cut short for practicality, piercing blue eyes behind optics that locked on targets far beyond normal vision, and a reputation that made even veteran commanders break into nervous sweat. For 2 years, she had been the most pursued woman across 3 countries. Not for stolen files, leaked intelligence, or toppled regimes. Riley Cross was hunted because she had become the most lethal assassin the modern era had ever seen. She eliminated high-value targets with surgical precision across borders. She was called the Ghost for a reason. Out of 24 confirmed kills, no witness had ever looked on her and lived. Security grids always failed at exactly the wrong instant. Guards mysteriously nodded off during critical watches. Whole facilities went dark just long enough for her to strike and fade into the shadows. But Riley hadn't started out as an assassin. She once wore a far different role, making her shift both bitterly ironic and strangely inevitable. 5 years before, she was Captain Riley Cross of the U.S. Special Forces, a decorated sharpshooter with more confirmed long-range victories than any active female soldier on record. She had finished 3 missions deep in hostile ground, earned 2 Silver Stars and a Bronze Star, and was on track for Major when everything unraveled. The operation that ended her career was supposed to be routine. Remove a high-value planner behind attacks on American troops. The intelligence looked solid. The target confirmed. The strike authorized at the highest level. At 1,247 meters, adjusting for crosswind, Riley sent a bullet through a pane barely wider than her shoulders. It was textbook marksmanship, flawless in every step. Target down, except the man was no enemy at all. He was a covert U.S. agent trying to infiltrate the very network she was sent to dismantle. The intel she was handed had been deliberately faked by someone eager to erase him without U.S. fingerprints. When the truth came out, Riley stood at a crossroad. She could take the blame, accept a dishonorable discharge and fade away, or face court-martial and decades locked away for killing a fellow operative. She chose a third option. She vanished, but not quietly. Within 6 months, 3 officers who forged the intel that destroyed her mission turned up dead. Each was removed with a single, impossibly exact shot. Each sight was immaculate, professional, untraceable. The meaning could not be denied. Riley Cross was no longer bound by military orders, engagement rules, or official approvals. She now followed her own creed, and that creed had only one rule. Betrayal requires payback. Have you ever been betrayed so deeply it forced you to rebuild who you are? Sometimes, the very people we lean on most remind us that trust itself can be a costly luxury we can't afford. For the next 18 months, Riley operated alone, taking on missions that aligned with her personal vision of justice. Drug lords forcing children into militias, arms dealers funneling weapons to terrorists, politicians lining their pockets through human trafficking. Those became her chosen prey. Her name in the underworld spread fast. She was expensive, she was selective, and above everything, she was absolutely reliable. When Riley Cross took a contract, the target's fate was sealed. They just didn't realize it yet. The 3 generals who rashly placed a price on her head embodied everything she had grown to despise about the military-industrial rot that once betrayed her. General Marcus Steele, commander of the 7th Infantry Division, spent 3 years selling U.S. military intelligence to the highest bidder, a scheme that cost at least 40 American soldiers their lives. Yet his Pentagon connections kept him safe from blame. General Rafiq Darzi ran a private army in disputed lands, fueled by oil wealth and armed through deals with global criminal syndicates. He carried out ethnic cleansing that displaced more than 100,000 civilians, but his geopolitical value left him untouchable. General Anton Volkov managed a network of mercenary groups across Eastern Europe, renting out his forces to whoever paid. His firms were tied to atrocities in 4 wars, yet his ability to provide governments with deniable assets made him indispensable to both sides. The 3 men shared one thing in common. They thrived on corruption and moral decay, the very poison that shattered Riley's faith in official justice. The bounty was their idea. Pooling resources, they put up a fortune to expose the ghost and erase the threat she posed to their empires. They had no clue they'd just handed her the perfect excuse to send a message that would echo through war rooms, cartels, and spy agencies around the world. The notice spread through underground channels on a cold November Tuesday. $2 million split evenly among the generals for any tip leading to the capture or confirmed death of the mysterious marksman known only as Ghost. By sundown, mercenaries whispered of it in bars from Bangkok to Bogota, in criminal camps from Moscow to Mexico, and even in London's intelligence corridors. Everyone wanted that prize. Everyone thought they'd succeed where armies and coalitions had failed. Every last one of them was wrong. Riley uncovered the bounty while sitting in a small cafe in Vienna, scrolling encrypted files on a laptop built to self-destruct if anyone else tried to open it. She read the posting twice, burned every detail into memory, then closed the computer and allowed herself the first smile in months. They had just given her their names. They'd also handed over their rough coordinates. They even provided photos for clear identification. Most importantly, they repeated the same fatal error that had doomed so many of Riley's past marks. They believed tracking was a danger reserved for others. Riley finished her coffee, paid the tab, and walked out of the cafe that afternoon with the calm stride of someone savoring good news. She had work ahead. The first obstacle was logistics. 3 generals, scattered across different locations, each heavily guarded and now bracing for an inevitable strike. Traditional methods required weeks of surveillance, careful intelligence gathering, and meticulous infiltration plans. But Riley didn't have weeks. The bounty meant every criminal, mercenary, and rogue agent worldwide would soon be on her trail. She needed to eliminate all 3 before her own cover was blown. Even more urgent, she had to send a message. These executions couldn't just remove threats. They had to make it clear that hunting the ghost would never be profitable. She started with General Marcus Steele. Intel placed him at an advanced operations post hidden in the mountains, overseeing drills with allied local forces. The compound bristled with 3 layers of security, constant patrols, and rapid response air cover. Yet the command hub sat exactly 2,347 meters from a ridgeline, offering flawless concealment and a clean shot. Before sunrise, Riley climbed the ridge and slid into position with the quiet precision that had built her legend. She carried a Barrett M82, .50 caliber rifle, chosen for its ability to pierce armored glass and deliver devastating force over extreme ranges. Preparing her sniper nest took 47 minutes. She calculated crosswinds, humidity, barometric pressure, even the Coriolis effect at that latitude. The round would travel nearly 2.5 kilometers, drop 5.5 meters under gravity, and drift a meter sideways in the wind. At exactly 8:47 a.m., General Steele stepped from his quarters and headed toward the command center, following the same pattern he'd kept for nearly a week. Riley steadied her breathing, aligned the scope, and pressed the trigger. The .50 caliber slug cut through the air at 850 meters per second, covering the gap in just 2.8 seconds. The shot slammed into General Marcus Steele's chest, killing him instantly before the sound even rolled across the base. As security scrambled to locate the origin and mount a counterstrike, Riley was already 5 kilometers away, moving toward her extraction with the practiced calm of someone who had drilled this escape countless times. Word of Steele's death rippled through global channels in less than 3 hours. The fact that he'd been eliminated in daylight, surrounded by military defenses, at a range most snipers considered impossible, sent shockwaves across command centers worldwide. But Riley's crosshairs were already fixed on her second target. General Rafik Darzi, shaken by Steele's swift assassination, tightened his defenses to near paranoia. He relocated into a subterranean bunker, surrounded himself with 3 rings of armed guards, and canceled every outdoor appearance until the ghost was found and neutralized. His precautions were thorough, disciplined, yet utterly useless. Riley had been studying that bunker's layout for 18 months, long before the bounty was ever declared. Darzy's fear made him predictable, and his fortress carried one fatal flaw he never foresaw. The ventilation system drew air through ducts located about 400 meters from the main gate. Those ducts were guarded by grates and sensors, yet they offered something more valuable than entry. They offered sound. Using specialized audio equipment, Riley tapped into the vibrations inside the ducts to eavesdrop on conversations within the bunker. 6 hours of surveillance gave her Darzy's location, his daily schedule, and his guard rotations. Even more vital, it revealed his private satellite calls to criminal partners, anchoring him to a single spot in the complex where the signal was strongest. Every day at precisely 14:30, he placed those calls without fail. That room sat directly beneath a ventilation shaft that stretched to the surface through concrete channels and steel piping. Riley spent 2 days mapping the exact trajectory needed to send an explosive through the system straight to Darzy's position. The device had to negotiate 4 sharp turns, drop 12 meters, and detonate within a 3-foot radius. She selected a compact but lethal charge, timed and remote-triggered, designed to maximize destruction in confined space while keeping collateral minimal. On the 3rd day at 14:28, she released the device into the duct from her surface hide. She had measured the drop, calculated the descent, and synchronized the blast to the second. At 14:30:15, General Rafik Darzi answered his satellite phone, as he always did. At 14:30:23, the device exploded directly above him. The blast stayed sealed within the bunker, though seismic monitors across the base instantly registered the detonation. When security rushed to Darzy's office, all they found was debris, and the remains of a man who thought steel and concrete would shield him better than open terrain. Riley was already 200 kilometers away, moving toward her last objective, when global outlets reported the second assassination. 2 generals in 5 days. Both had fallen despite layers of protection. Both were eliminated through methods that showed an intimate knowledge of their routines and defenses. The message was clear. The ghost wasn't fleeing from the bounty. It had become her checklist. General Anton Volkov learned of Darzy's death while on his private yacht, anchored 12 kilometers offshore in international waters. His reaction was immediate and absolute. Every operation was halted. All personnel were recalled to the vessel, which was relocated to a position only he knew. The yacht was a floating fortress, equipped with radar arrays, sonar nets, armed security, and anti-aircraft defenses. Volkov had turned a luxury symbol into a mobile command post built to repel attacks from air, sea, or below the waves. But he made one grave miscalculation. He assumed Riley would have to approach the vessel from the outside to reach him. He braced for submarines, aircraft, surface assaults, even helicopter insertions. What never entered his mind was that she was already aboard. 3 weeks earlier, Riley had infiltrated his ranks under the alias Alina Markova, a communications expert with flawless credentials and impeccable references in maritime security. Her cover had been carefully built for months, complete with forged records, verifiable contacts, and certifications that passed every check. Volkov's paranoia had ironically worked in her favor. When he ordered his crew confined to the yacht, he personally assigned Alina Markova to oversee communications security. For 21 days, Riley lived and worked at his side, running his systems, monitoring defenses, and winning his trust through flawless performance and apparent loyalty. She memorized his routines, his defenses, his daily habits, even the exact layout of his private suite. Most importantly, she secured unrestricted control of the yacht's electronic core. On the 6th morning after Darcy's demise, General Anton Volkov followed his usual pattern. Up at 6:30, morning workout, reviewing overnight reports, then preparing his daily briefing. At 8:47, he stepped into his private office to study encrypted updates from his global enterprises. At 8:48, Alina Markova knocked with an urgent security notice that demanded his attention. At 8:49, Riley Cross shut the door behind her and raised a silenced pistol with the calm ease of someone who had done it countless times. "General Volkov," she said evenly, weapon locked on target. "My name is Riley Cross. I believe you've been looking for me." His hand twitched toward the alarm button, then froze as realization hit. This woman had been running his communications for 3 weeks. "The ghost," he muttered, voice steady despite the shock. "I should have known." "You put a bounty on me," Riley said coldly, her pistol aimed square at his chest. "You turned me into a celebrity. You broadcast my name to every thug and mercenary alive." "It was just business," Volkov answered flatly. "You've cut down too many of our allies. Bad for everyone's profits." "I know how business works," Riley replied, her voice razor sharp. "I'm about to close a 3-week deal." "Funny thing, you hired me to protect you from me. Ever realize the one you trust most is often the one you never should? Sometimes the deadliest enemy is the one you welcome inside your circle." Volkov studied her face, recognizing in it the ruthless precision that had forged her reputation. "If you're going to kill me, at least tell me why," he demanded. "What turned a U.S. soldier into an international assassin?" "Betrayal," Riley said simply. "The same thing that will finish you. You broke the code that keeps certain lines sacred. I still keep it." "There are 12 armed men aboard," Volkov warned. "Even if you shoot me, you'll never make it out alive." "General," Riley said, glancing at her watch, "in 30 seconds your yacht will suffer catastrophic engine failure." Almost on cue, alarms shrieked across the ship. Red lights flared as the engines died, leaving the massive vessel drifting in open waters. Her cover as Alina Markova had given her total access to every system, and she had been rewriting them for weeks. Volkov could already hear his men shouting orders, racing through corridors, scrambling to contain chaos that dragged them farther from him. His fortress had become his coffin. "Any last words, General?" Riley asked. "Only one," Volkov replied. "You've killed all 3 of us. What comes next for the ghost?" She hesitated briefly, then answered, "I send a message to anyone who thinks hunting me is worth it." The silencer whispered as she pulled the trigger. Volkov's body was discovered 6 hours later, when his men finally restored communications and broke into the sealed office. By then, Alina Markova had vanished without a trace. The cameras had mysteriously failed, the engineered diversions erased from the logs, and even DNA in her cabin neutralized by chemical wash. The ghost had upheld her legend once more. News of the third assassination spread across the globe in under 12 hours. 3 generals, 3 distinct methods, 3 flawless strikes, erasing the entire bounty council in less than 2 weeks. The message was undeniable. Putting a price on the ghost wasn't an opportunity. It was a death sentence. Yet Riley Cross's mission wasn't finished. 48 hours after Anton Volkov's death, encrypted messages appeared in intelligence databases, criminal networks, and mercenary channels worldwide. Each was identical, short, clinical, signed with one word, ghost. The bounty has been collected. $2 million paid in full. 3 targets eliminated as contracted. No further collection is required. The statement ended with, "This concludes all business regarding the operative known as Ghost. Any future bounty will be treated as a breach of contract with consequences." Attached were photographs from all 3 sites, technical breakdowns of weapons and methods, and timestamps proving each strike had been carried out within the original bounty's window. It read like an invoice, transaction complete. But beneath it was a threat. Within a week, 3 crime syndicates quietly pulled the bounties they'd planned to place on other international targets. 2 government agencies scrapped assassination contracts they had been preparing to authorize. A dozen suspected informants and rivals were spared. Mercenary firms abruptly decided chasing ghost intelligence wasn't worth the ruin it brought. The entire underground of contract killing and espionage had heard Riley Cross's message loud and clear. Some people are far more dangerous to chase than to ignore. 6 months later, she sat in another cafe, in another city, scanning encrypted files on another laptop built to self-destruct if compromised. This time, she was in Prague. The new intel offered her a contract in Southeast Asia, and once again, the device would erase itself if anyone else tried to touch it. She had returned to her old work, missions carefully chosen to align with her own sense of justice. The bounty incident hadn't stained her, it had elevated her. Crime networks now competed to hire her, realizing that employing the ghost was far safer than ending up in her sights. But something within her had shifted during those 2 weeks when she became the most hunted woman alive. It had reminded her why she chose to be the predator. The ripple effect of the general's deaths shook the underworld in ways she had never anticipated. Volkov's mercenary empire fractured, lieutenants fighting over scraps and exposing years of buried secrets. Rafik Darzi's private army collapsed overnight, leaving a vacuum that government forces quickly filled, finally restoring stability to a region long scarred by war. Just as significant, the intelligence networks Marcus Steele had corrupted came under scrutiny and were dismantled. With his protection gone, whistleblowers inside the Pentagon stepped forward, revealing proof of systemic betrayal that had cost countless American lives. A classified investigation began, the kind of justice Riley never thought possible through official means. What had started as her personal revenge had triggered real systemic change. The 3 generals she erased were more than men. They were the keystones of vast networks of corruption that had thrived unchecked. Their deaths dragged those networks into the light, tearing them apart. It was a harsh lesson in unintended consequences, one that forced her to consider the broader impact of her actions. The next dossier she examined detailed a trafficking syndicate spanning 5 nations, kidnapping children through corrupt officials and organized crime. The target was Liang Chen, a businessman who used legitimate shipping companies as fronts to move human cargo alongside freight. Reports revealed his operation trafficked more than 800 children in just 2 years. selling them across Southeast Asia and beyond. Local authorities had tried to intervene, but Chen's ties to senior officials kept him untouchable. The bounty was $500,000, funded by a coalition of human rights groups pooling resources to deliver justice where governments failed. As Riley read the file, the pattern was all too familiar: corruption shielding crimes, official systems crippled by profit, justice stalled by politics. But this assignment was different. She wasn't being asked to eliminate just another corrupt figure. She was being asked to stop a predator whose continued existence meant unending suffering for hundreds of children. The choice was obvious. Some people had to be erased, not just for corruption, but because their very presence endangered everyone around them. The three generals had embodied a brand of evil, profiting from lives, sacrificing others, never facing consequence. By killing them, Riley had removed threats not only to herself, but to countless innocents who would never even know she saved them. Liang Chen represented the same rot, the same collapse of morality, the same systemic abuse of the helpless. The only difference now was that Riley wasn't acting out of vengeance. She was answering a duty to a cause bigger than her own survival. She closed the laptop, finished her coffee, and walked out into the streets of Prague. She had decided to take the Southeast Asia contract. Intelligence confirmed Chen was coordinating child abductions on a massive scale. Passing centuries-old stonework that bore silent witness to violence, Riley shut down her device. After betrayal, war, and upheaval, she reflected on her own evolution. She had started as a soldier betrayed, driven by hunger for personal justice. She had become more than just a soldier chasing revenge. She was now a force for systemic change where formal justice had failed. The irony wasn't lost on her. Riley Cross had proven far more effective at protecting the innocent as a fugitive than she ever had in uniform. Rules of engagement, politics, and bureaucratic chains had once tied her down. Now, free of them, she could strike fast, decisive, and without compromise. Her encrypted comms device buzzed with a high-priority update. The Southeast Asia contract had changed. Liang Chen was preparing to expand his trafficking routes into Eastern Europe, tripling his reach for abducted children. His elimination had been moved forward. The mission had to be executed within 2 weeks before the network went fully operational. Riley read the intel twice, committing routes, timetables, and defenses to memory. Chen's stronghold was a heavily fortified complex in Singapore, hidden behind legitimate trade hubs that made perfect cover. Taking him down would require the same deep infiltration she had used against Volkov, but the compressed timeline meant she would face far greater risks. She allowed herself a faint smirk, the kind of challenge she thrived on: a high-value target, complex defenses, a narrow window, and the lives of hundreds of children depending on her success. This was exactly why she had chosen this road. The Ghost was no longer just an assassin. She had become something the world needed, even if the world would never admit it. Some enemies had to be stopped. Some justice couldn't wait for permission. Some problems demanded solutions beyond laws and gray zones. The Ghost had work waiting. And if you've ever been betrayed by the very system you trusted, you know why some step outside the lines. Sometimes the only true justice comes from those unwilling to accept that profit makes crime untouchable. Sometimes the unseen protector is the one who saves you. Sometimes the ghost in the system is exactly what the system needs, and sometimes the most dangerous figure in the room is the one with nothing left to lose and everything left to defend. The bounty on Riley Cross's head was meant to drag her from the shadows. Instead, it reminded the world that some allies are too valuable to hunt, some skills too dangerous to provoke, and that placing a price on a ghost is the last mistake anyone ever makes. The ghost was back on the job, and the world was safer for it, even if it never realized.